Welcome to Monday, January 5th, 2026. When tragedy strikes, Wyoming knows to contact Grant Lawson and the law firm for truck safety, fierce advocate for justice and fighting for safer roads across the USA. Visit truckaccidents.com and see how Grant and his team can make a difference. Well, the illusions block is gone finally. Now what? A lot of you probably wondering if that block is going to change and does that mean our weather will change? And the answer is yes. It's going to be a process, but we do have some changes, especially later in the week. Now, to start the week, it's the same story. More wet weather for the West Coast, more wet weather for areas along and west of the Divide. Some mountains will get some more snowfall up high along and west of the Divide. East of the Divide, it's the same old story. So really nothing new under the sun through Wednesday. By Thursday through Saturday, though, it actually is going to get colder. Yes, even colder east of the Divide, and there might even be a little bit of weather. So it's going to be getting much colder. Then we're going to have a warm up early next week. Then another shot of, and what will likely be much colder weather once we get past this cycle and this breakdown of the illusions block. And we'll go through that here in a moment. In the meantime, tons of photos coming in over the New Year's weekend, from rainbows off the snowy range to beautiful sunrises and sunsets all across the region. And that's one thing that we've had. At least there's been sunrises and sunsets that have been beautiful, because there's been a distinct lack of weather everywhere else, especially if you're east of the Divide out on into the plains. We've been blessed by beautiful sunrises and sunsets. That includes Bethel, Alaska, and we'll come back and talk about Alaska here in a moment. For a lot of you, you probably couldn't help but miss that moon. It was just spectacular over the weekend. Jupiter came out with it in conjunction as well, causing some moon halos. And here's a shot of some stormy weather headed towards Mount Tom again, as California continues to see precipitation and high mountain snows. And we're going to continue, at least here to start the week, with more of the same east of the Continental Divide. Beautiful shot there near Crested Butte, Colorado. And lenticular clouds were out in full force this weekend as winds aloft and Pacific moisture came together from Buena Vista to Silverthorne to the Wheatland area to Belfast, South Dakota. Then a beautiful shot of the moon there above Lander. And then the end of the photos, look at that shot by Dave Bell. Beautiful moonrise near the Pinedale area over the Wind River Mountains this weekend. Winter weather advisories posted for the mountains of the Intermountain West, the Wasatch here, and in the mountains of southern Wyoming. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, we're going to see some of this California moisture, prompting the weather advisories there to come inland. Now, I'm going to show you something I don't show you very often, and that is a forecast for Hawaii. We have winter storm warnings for the higher elevations of Hawaii, as a classic Kona low is clashing with a lot of weather out in the Pacific right now to bring flooding, high surf, and winter storm warnings for the high elevations of Hawaii. Yes, it happens. And Alaska, looking at Hawaii and Alaska for a change. I know we don't talk much about them, but boy, look at Alaska. Severe cold. There were temperatures in the Yukon and in Alaska this weekend that hit more than minus 60. In fact, I think I saw a minus 66 in a couple of locations. That cold air is locked in for a little bit longer in Alaska before they'll see a bit of a break with this weather pattern shift. Satellite imagery shows the main core of the low still sitting off the coast of Northern California, but bits and pieces of moisture are breaking off this main low, and you can really see that here in the water vapor. And this system is going to come through today. This is what's going to produce the mountain snow. And up here, you can see that we've got a cold low over Alaska causing that severe cold, but the high here in the Aleutians is gone. So the Aleutian block, we can put an X over it. For at least the time being, it has been erased. We still have the Greenland block, although not as strong, but that blocking pattern is still there and will play a role here over the next 7 days before it begins to weaken and shift around as well. So as we go forward through the week, this is for Wednesday. We have a zonal flow, which is going to keep a lot of the nation very mild. Pacific air is going to flood the lower 48 for the first half of the week. That's going to make it very warm. Notice this high pressure ridge, though, developing in the Gulf of Alaska and the low crashing the Aleutians. This is going to bring about a shift in the weather by the end of the week. But between now and Wednesday, this is a map that looks familiar because I've shown you a map that looks like this for about every day for the last week. Moisture coming into the west, getting areas west of the divide, almost nothing east of the divide. So that continues through the middle part of this week. And you'll see some decent snows falling in the higher elevations, especially the high northern Rockies. Then as we get to Friday, whoa, what is this? This looks different. Well, with what's going on out here, we finally get an opportunity for a high pressure ridge to develop off the west coast. You put a ridge here, you go into the fridge here. Now, we're going to see modified Pacific air come in, which means it's Arctic air, but it's been modified by the Pacific. So yes, winds aloft come in from the northwest, and it is going to get a lot colder by the end of the week and the start of the weekend, but it's not a true Arctic outbreak. Nonetheless, this is the first time we've seen anything of this magnitude be able to get across to the divide and out into the plains. It's not going to be a major storm, but it's the beginning of the process of the weather patterns changing. And you can see the colder air comes in, and these are the temperature anomalies by Friday. So a lot colder across the central and southern Rockies, and even some colder weather breaks out across Nebraska, Kansas, parts of Oklahoma, and Texas. And you can see all the mild Pacific air that gets pushed across the nation, even eastern Canada, during the course of this week. But finally, we've got something coming in. Again, nothing to write home about, but everything's relative, right? And it will spread moisture east of the divide. Again, not a major storm, but since we haven't had weeks of anything in that area I just circled, it's going to feel like a big change. And yes, it might even snow. Now we'll see how this goes. Of course, you should be suspicious if this will happen at all because it just hasn't happened. And I would agree with your suspicion. But it does look like the combination of Pacific air that's moist and cold could produce a little bit of winter finally in this area here, while the mountains and areas west of the divide continue to pick up more precipitation. So there may actually be a little bit of winter weather that gets east of the Rockies at the end of this week. This would be late Thursday into Friday into early Saturday. Then we have high pressure shift a little bit more east off the west coast. We have winds aloft coming in from the northwest, so colder weather returns to the Great Lakes and the eastern part of the country by the early part of next week, while we have a high building off the west coast into the Rockies. So this leads to early next week's warm-up. But up here, we've got the low in Alaska and the low in the Aleutians that is going to have an opportunity to come up over top, then down, as you'll see here in a moment. So by Thursday of next week, a piece of that Aleutian low comes in, crashes the high, shifts the high eastward. Again, this is going to lead to an early week. Next week, there'll be a warm-up. But this is all part of the process. This low right here erases this high here, and then high pressure then comes in behind it, and then look what happens. We start to build that trough again, and it starts to hook up with the polar vortex up here, which means the opportunity for much colder weather by the end of next week and the weekend of the 17th and 18th to invade the nation again. As long as this high pressure ridge develops here, it's a foregone conclusion that the Arctic air will have easier access into the western United States. So this, in theory, is what you would expect with the Aleutians low block breaking down and going away, the Greenland block weakening, and the weather patterns shifting into something different by mid-month. We'll just have to wait and see. Our regional travel forecast updated each afternoon. Have yourself a great Monday. We'll see you tomorrow.